want to dedicate my talk tonight to Stu Connor, who was a longtime advocate for Montana archaeology and who really kind of got me started in dealing with rock art sites. And he was really kind of a mentor to me in many, many ways. And here he is with Paula. This was on the last time that we really went on a field trip with him. We saw him many times after that, but he couldn't go on field trips. And this particular one, he had just broken a hip and was just recovering from his broken hip. And he wanted to take me to show me this site, which was a fasting site, which was up in Sunlight Basin. And after about 4 hours of driving around to find the road to get up there, we finally found the road and drove up there and got out of the vehicles. And he starts out to take me up to show me this site, and all at once he says, going down, you know. He starts to collapse, and Paula grabs him and holds him up, you know, and gets started, whatever. And then we go about maybe 10 yards more, and it's going down, you know. So we get going again, and I say, maybe you should just sit right here, you know. And so he chooses to sit down with Paula, and I go off to find the site. And it's nearly a mile away over boulder fields and all kinds of stuff, you know. But I finally found it, and I got to do quite a bit with Stu. I'm going to talk about Valley of the Shields tonight. Here I am with Stu at Joe Medicine Crow at Valley of the Shields in 1988. And a wonderful trip that I had with him, and then another little excursion like all of you Montanans who sit around the campsites at night, you know, our bottle of brandy and our cigars telling stories to each other. So Stu was, this is not about Stu tonight though. This is a talk about DStretch. And I want to introduce you to the concept of DStretch, decorrelation stretch. It's a computer program. It's an app in a computer that works with digital images. And Stu was a great photographer, and I'm really sorry that I didn't get the opportunity to introduce him to DStretch. He couldn't understand it when I tried to show it to him. He couldn't see well enough to be able to see what was going on with the photos I showed him. But essentially, it works with algorithms to stretch out the color spectrum. And it was developed by NASA for the Mars rover images, and then they made it public, and so that then this guy named John Harmon, who you see there on the right, he created an app. He was interested in rock art himself and rock paintings, and he created an app that made it work better with rock paintings. So it worked, so that he made it work with rock paintings. And so what happened is that when you use this app, you get like about 20 different iterations that you can look at. So one will make the red better, one will make the green better, one will make the purple better, et cetera, and you can kind of click on them as you go through it. And he then put it on a camera, and so that in effect you could take your digital image into your computer at your home, and you could use DStretch, and you could then, you know, see what it was. But that didn't help you in the field. If you were out in the field, you couldn't, you know, you took a picture with your camera, you couldn't see it. So he put it on. He found like 3 models of Canon cameras that he could put it on. And you could then take these cameras in the field, and you could push buttons on the back of it, and it would go through these iterations, and you could see things happen with this different colors, etc. And then some guy in California discovered that these cameras were available, bought them all up off eBay, and then put the DStretch on them, started selling them for $100, and made John madder than hell, you know. So he put it on a cell phone. And now anyone who has a cell phone can get it for $20, and you can get DStretch and put it on your phone. So I'm talking about what it did. Let's see how it works. You see that painting on the left there? See that little red painting that you see there? This is what you see in DStretch. Wow. Yeah, wow. Why we like DStretch, huh? Why this has changed our lives as individuals who record these rock paintings. Totally changed our lives in how we do this kind of stuff. So many of you have been to the Valley of the Shields, and I'm going to talk first about Valley of the Shields tonight. So here's a wall, here's a sandstone wall at Valley of the Shields. Do you see the painting there? Did anybody see anything? That's what's there. Isn't that incredible? What we're able to do? We literally are walking down the canyon walls, taking pictures of it, to be able to see if we can find paintings on the canyon walls. You know, I mean, it's so incredible what we're able to do with DStretch, how it's helped us, and why now when I record rock art and have now for the last 25 years, you know, pretty intensively. I could have been an archaeologist for the last 60 years, but I've focused on rock art the last 30 or more years. And it's why now I want to record painted sites rather than petroglyph sites, because we have this DStretch and our better opportunities to be able to understand what's going on with these sites when we're at them. So it also works on petroglyphs, but not very often. You can see this is an incised design that comes out a lot better when you put it in DStretch. We always take pictures with petroglyphs just for that very reason, so that we can be sure that it's going to work or not work. But usually it doesn't work. In this case, there's more iron in the rock, and so it's showing up because of the iron in the rock. It's showing up a little bit better. All right, so let's go to the main panel at Valley of the Shields. And this is the shields that you see there are what we call Castle Garden style shields. And so we say that because the site where they were first discovered is at Castle Garden, Wyoming, east of Riverton, Wyoming. And these particular shields, Castle Garden style shields, there are a lot of different shield figures out there, but this particular kind of shield figure is made in a very particular way. So that here you see some of these shield figures, and you'll see that you have this abrading of the surface. These are almost hubcap-like abrasions that are done into the wall. All of this has been abraded up here in this, and then the design is incised in the design, and then they put the paint on later. And the use of green paint is another thing that is unusual for Castle Garden style shields. So we find them, you'll see, and we date them at AD 1450 to 1500. Now, how do I know that we date them at that age? I know that because we did an excavation at this panel that you see right here with these shield figures that I just showed you. And in that excavation, at the base of that, we found these abrading stones as well as a bunch of other artifacts, so that you can see these are the stones that were used to abrade that surface up there. We also found the stones that were used to incise the surface, but the most important thing we found were 3 or 4 of these fire hearths, which gave us the ability to get radiocarbon so that we could date, and we dated the date at 1450 to 1500, which means that if I'm dating the age of the things used to make the surface up here, I've dated the paintings. Did you follow that? You've gone through how it worked? So when I say they're made at 1450 to 1500, we're pretty confident in those ages. I can also say that at a period earlier, we did think they were older than that, but we've discovered that that was an old wood problem, and I don't want to confuse you with that tonight, but it was because we had dated pine wood, and pine is older, and so we dated sagebrush in this situation, and sagebrush is younger stuff, and we're able to get this more accurate date with what we got with the dates for the whole thing. So now we're going to talk about DStretch of the panel. And you'll see this is one channel, RGB DStretch of that panel. And you'll see that we're getting the greens to come out in this one better than. And if we press another one, we get the purples to come out better, so that we get different colors by going through each of those different channels that we have with DStretch. We can get different colors to come out better from one versus the other. And then what happens is an individual takes those images home. This is Lori White, who's exceptionally good at this kind of stuff. She's been working with me for the last 15 years and is exceptionally good as an artist in what she does. And she works with Photoshop, and she moves to a drawing tablet. And she uses layers. The first thing she does is outline of the rock surface, and then she puts in all the cracks in the rock, and then she puts in all the different colors, and each color on top of each color, and each color, so on and so forth, until she's got it exactly like she likes to look at, and she puts them all together, and this is what she produces. So that's what's there at that site. You're not going to see that when you go up to it, because you don't have DStretch in your eyes. But if you did, you'd be able to see what we're seeing here. And of course, some of it's eroded away. You can see where there are parts that were here that you had where they abraded the surfaces. Probably one figure over here is totally gone, where there was something abraded at this surface right here. This is ground level right here. See ground level there? So this figure's buried below the ground. If you go to the site, this figure only sticks up above the site like this. Now there are some things that I can say about this panel, which I will, just a couple of 2-3 things that I say about the panel. And one is that this figure here is of considerable interest to everybody. You'll see him here. He's got this green spot in the inside, and this is the one we call the bear comes out motif. So that in essence, what this is two bears coming out of a den. You have the two bears' heads. You see their eyes, you see their teeth coming out of the den. We call this the bear comes out motif. Curiously enough, if we go down to Castle Garden, the site where I said we named these shields for, that very site, you'll discover this same thing. This is look at got green ears. We got two bears coming out of the same den. This is one of the ways that we can definitely interlink this style, Castle Garden style, what we have at Valley of the Shields, with the site at Castle Gardens. We have the bear comes out motif. And then, if we look at a crow shield, we see that same doggone design with the bear comes out, and curiously enough, a Kiowa shield, where we have that same design where the bear comes out motif. Those two shields are very close to each other. And in fact, not too many people know this, but you're going to learn a little more about it in the next few minutes. And that is that the Crow and the Kiowa, a tribe that lived down in Oklahoma today, were once allied with the Crow Indians and came from Montana. And they lived with the Crow Indians at AD 1500, 1550, 1560, and moved out of here and moved down to Oklahoma while the Crow stayed in this part of the world. So, interestingly enough, this bear comes out motif expresses itself across a wide number of different cultural groups. We find it quite a bit. Some of you know these sites. This is the Krause site, which is on private land, and they don't like for anyone to go, but we have this sketch of it. But you see that same motif. The bear comes out. You see the same as what was on the shields. This one down here is half bear. He's in Weatherman Draw. He's hard to see here, but can you see his head right in here? He's sketched in, and the back half of him is gone. That's because he is emerging from the rock. He's coming out, you see, just as the other ones are coming out of the den with this bear comes out motif. This is at Petroglyph Canyon, which I'm sure some of you have hiked in Petroglyph Canyon. In this crevice, which you may never have looked in, back in this little crevice right down here, you discover a whole bunch of bear paws. That's a different expression of the bear comes out motif. That same motif with the bear comes out happening in a different way at a different location. You get what I'm talking about? Or have I lost you already here? All right, good. All right, so let's go back to the example. at the main shield situation, and look at these two over here on this side. Here they are. You got this guy, a green shield. He's got this little top knot on top of his head. You got this guy over here. He looks like he's got slats in front of him. We think that that could be because he's wearing Thompson slat armor. The Thompson tribe are west of lived in southern British Columbia, west of the Flathead and Pend Oreille. And we think that there's some possibility that they may have visited Valley of the Shields, and either someone put their image up there, or they themselves put it up there. More likely someone else put their image up there. Here's the helmets that they wore with that slat armor. These burls that were carved out into wooden helmets. And we got that same sort of thing going on here with this. Now, this, of course, we're speculating at what we're seeing here. But interestingly enough, this figure has this little top-like thing on the top of his head. And this is what Thompson hairstyle looked like. So we think that's a secondary suggestion to the Thompson having been, and a group from western Montana, actually west of western Montana, northern Idaho, and southern British Columbia may have visited that site. This, of course, is a reconstruction now, so that we put the photorealistic painting of our Thompson warrior visiting the site of Valley of the Shields, just for the expression of something to do with what we're working with. This is another panel, locality 3 at Valley of the Shields. This is the DStretch of that panel. This is the drawing. So you see those shields and shield warriors dominate the individual shields and shield warriors with the legs and the top coming out the side. This is one of the most common rock art motifs in Montana, these shield-bearing warriors. These painted examples at Castle Garden style. Here's 2 Meter Man. For those of you who have been to Valley of the Shields, 2 Meter Man is this big, standing, 2 meters tall, how he gets his name. He's the largest shield-bearing warrior figure we know about. Here he is in DStretch, so that you get a beauty of him looking at you there. Or here he is in DStretch with a different iteration, and we really see how they made him, can't we, with that outline around the outside of him there before they started and did the outline of the inside. He didn't have any other design. He's not particularly, just his size that really freaks you out, you know, when you see him, because he's not particularly interesting because he didn't have any other design inside his shield than this kind of donut hole inside his shield. Everyone always wants me when they're at Valley of the Shields to get my picture taken in front of 2 Meter Man. Here I am in DStretch in front of 2 Meter Man. And here's our reconstructed Thompson warrior visiting 2 Meter Man in Valley of the Shields. This, if you go through the crack just beyond 2 Meter Man, if you've been there, you might understand what I'm talking about. But if you crawl through a crack just beyond 2 Meter Man, you find this panel right here, which is this. We call him Half Man. And he obviously had another half, but his other half is more fugitive and didn't survive as well through the years. And if you then continue on, that sort of through that, you've gone through the crack and you continue on, you come to this hole down, you crawl down underneath these rocks, totally underneath the ground, and you find this panel of figures down there, which here's, if you see it here, there's a V-neck figure here, incised in the rock. And I'll show it to you so that we see it better this way. Here's the shield figure that we were looking at. Here's the V-neck figure. This is the second most common type of anthropomorph or human figure that we have in Montana. Shield-bearing warriors being the first. The V-necks are the second most common type, with this big V shoulders like this. They're more recent, usually more recent. Usually they can be as old as 1,000 years ago. But most of them that are incised like this are going to date sometime up in the period of time that's going to be 1750 to 1800, somewhere in that period of time, so they're quite a bit more recent. And it was one of the reasons we were semi-excited to find it in this place, because it's something more recent than the other stuff that we had, which tells us then at Valley of the Shields we have more than one type, more than one age of rock art at the site, which shouldn't be surprising terribly to us. These are interesting, aren't they? These dots. We kind of think they could be a constellation. Could be representing a constellation. And this could be the Dipper, but it doesn't really fit perfectly with it. But we have another site that if I come back some other time, I'll talk to you about, where we definitely do have dots that make constellations in very much the same fashion as you see here. So this is important to us, and it looks like it might be another set of dots that are part of a constellation in some form or another. This is another group of figures that are underneath the ground. There are actually 3 places at Valley of the Shields where you go underneath the ground and find things that a lot of people know nothing about at that site. And this one is on the back side of where the main panels are. And you go underneath the ground here, and these figures are a little easier to see. You can see on this wall right here what they look like, and here's the drawing of that. This is probably a wolf. The pretty good chance that it could be a wolf, and that's a highly unusual figure to have on a shield or have anywhere in rock art in Montana or the whole American West. You just don't have it. It looks like a plant on this one, a whole bunch of dots on this one, like the dotted shield that was in the main panel. And what do we have here? We have another V-neck. So now we have 2 V-necks at this site, and I told you they're going to date more recently. And then, interestingly enough, if we look at this figure, the possibility that it's a horse, we're not real certain of that. We don't have enough evidence to really suggest it. But because we got the V-neck over here, and we got this possible horse here, we kicked that dating up to that AD 1450 with the older stuff that I had with the stuff that I dated with the shield figures, and then the 1750 coming up, and perhaps even 1800 with the V-necks and the possible horse that you have here. Now I have to do something a little bit different for you. I'm going to give you a little picture here of the American Southwest. And some of you have some understanding of this thing that says Ancestral Puebloan down here used to be called Anasazi. And then we have the Mogollon and the Hohokam, and then we have these people called the Fremont up at the top. The Anasazi, that little central group in there, they got upset 20 years ago when people were saying what happened to the Anasazi, and people were saying space aliens came and got them, and et cetera, et cetera. And the Pueblo peoples on the Rio Grande River said, what happened to the Anasazi? We're right here. We just migrated over here, you know. So they didn't like that notion of calling them Anasazi, so they started calling them Ancestral Puebloan, which makes a lot more sense, you know, because they are the ancestors of the Pueblo peoples. And these Fremont peoples up here, though, are of some interest to us right now, because they grew corn, squash, beans. They lived in these pit house villages, and they stored their food in granaries kind of up in the sides of the walls, etc. They spoke a Tanoan language, the Fremont did, which is the Pueblo language. And they made pottery. They made this shiny kind of grayware pottery, and they made big shield figures like we have, big, huge. This is at a site called McConkey Ranch at Vernal, Wyoming. And you can see that they incised, they did the same kind of smoothing off of the surface and putting on the paint and making stuff in very much similar fashion to what what we think happened is that coming out of Utah, where they were down here, partially into Colorado and Fremont, all through this area right here, that some of those Fremont moved north about AD 1450. Most of them probably moved east with their Anasazi neighbors, and were on the Rio Grande. Some of them became the Jemez Pueblo near Albuquerque, other Tinoan speakers along the Rio Grande. So most of them moved there, but some moved north like this. And they ultimately became the Kiowa. So that group that moved north then ended up becoming the Kiowa. So that's not unusual at all, that a group then start with a new name. They're now buffalo hunters and teepee dwellers. They're no longer living in pit houses and growing corn. They've now become a different people called the Kiowa. So interestingly enough, the Fremont spoke a Tinoan language, and the Kiowa speak a Tinoan language, which fits them together quite nicely. And this is the real kick, because your museum director here, Patty Molinaro, and Dave Eckworth were at Valley of the Shields last February, and they found a large group of pottery sherds, and they took me out there a month or so ago, and I collected those sherds, and they are very smooth on the outside. They have all the characteristics of Fremont grayware. And I have them now, they're off being analyzed. And the most interesting thing that I can report tonight is that I have now applied for an excavation permit to go in and put a unit in over the place where we recovered these sherds, so that we can conceivably find more of them and maybe put a pot together so that we get some idea of what we got there. They're extremely important, and I think that probably next June I'm going to do that excavation and recover whatever's gone on with these sherds and figure out if they represent Fremont or Kiowa. That would be a big step forward in our saying that this stuff at Valley of the Shields was made by the Kiowa or the Fremont Kiowa. That combination when they were switching from becoming the Fremont to becoming the Kiowa. Do you follow me? So good. Okay. Let's now move to a place called Bear Canyon. All right, so at the mouth there in the Priors, you know, a lot of you been there. You've been up Bear Canyon. Here we are looking out Bear Canyon. You know, these guys have these drones these days, and we get these excellent photographs of our sites, you know. Isn't that wonderful? We got a great guy that we work with, Mark Willis, that does all this stuff for us. And we're going to look here at this little ledge right in here. And you can see here that it's no longer possible to access it. Here's where you could once walk up this little ramp right here and get across here, but it's all broken off, and this is all collapsed off, and you can't get up, and what we want to look at is up here on this wall up here on the top of this, at this side. This was first reported to me about 20 years ago by Barbara Jaquith from Red Lodge. I'm sure some of you knew. And this is her touched up photograph of what she saw up there. And you can really see a little bit of paint and very little going on. But then Dave Eckworth told Tim Urbaniak about it. And Tim Urbaniak went out there and used DStretch. And he was able to see then that there was quite a bit more going on up there on that wall. So he got me interested in it. And I went out with a group of people from Sacred Sites Research, and fortunately, Kobe Chatwood hauled Lauren Roush out there to set up a series of ropes for us so that we could get up onto that flat surface up there without killing ourselves. And so he helped us up onto there. And you can see now some scale here, that this is Mark right here. So it'll give you some idea of the size of that scale of that surface right there. We actually found 3 panels of rock art up there. 1, 2, and 3, that big panel on the end right there. Panel 1 was not much. You can see here's the drawing of it, just some red paint across the wall. Panel 2 was quite a bit more. You could see a really good sized figure there. And in fact, here's the drawing of him. He's 9 feet tall. 9 feet tall. Boy, he's 3 feet taller than 2 Meter Man. You know, he's 9 feet tall. And you can see here this incredible thing. I mean, the interesting thing is he's this big guy that's up there on the wall, but he's got this little insect-like thing next to him, which is curious, isn't it? A little curious thing. Let's go to the panel on the end. This is the best you will ever see it without DStretch. You cannot see it at all in the morning, in morning light at all. If there's any sunshine on it, you won't see anything at all. It has to be in shade. And if it's in the shade, you'll see about what you see right here. And then when we put it in DStretch, this is what we have. We have this incredible figure. He's got a rattle in one hand. He's got this is a hoof. He's got a hoof on one foot down here. There's another insect-like thing down here. He's superimposed over the top of a buffalo, as you can see here. And here he is in the drawing of him. And so you see, there are so many things of interest about this guy. I mean, he becomes a human that is turned into a buffalo, a human buffalo figure. And he's got the buffalo behind him as though he's transforming out of that buffalo into this human figure. He's got this medallion on his chest, which I think one day will help us understand more about him after we find some more things about it. But right now we don't know a great deal more about what that medallion represents on his chest. He is, interestingly enough, on this rock up here, which looks like, to some people, a buffalo head, or a human head, or a buffalo human head. Some other people can't see it. We call these things mementoliths when we have a rock that looks like something. And we do discover that rock art will be put on places like that occasionally because it's associated with that sort of a feature like that. So, interestingly enough, the Mandan and the Hidatsa and the other Siouan tribes all had a buffalo dance. And you'll see the buffalo headdress. This is from the Buffalo Bill Historical Center, the picture that on the top there, one that they still have on exhibit there. This is a more interesting example of ledger art on the left. And look at those doggone insects associated with it. And we got insects associated with this guy out here. We don't understand that. It might be that when the buffalo herds run through the pastures, all the insects fly up and they become part of it, but we don't understand quite what it's all about. This is a famous ledger art piece of work by Blackhawk, who died about 1890. And we can see in this, the guy is transforming from a human into a buffalo. He's got buffalo feet and a human foot and a buffalo foot. And here are those insects associated with it. So, pretty interesting, isn't it? Isn't that kind of fascinating? We'll find this thing on the Bear Canyon wall in a place that I had walked by at least 30 times and had not seen. Probably even looked straight up at it, and had not seen it if it was in the morning. And there's that thing up there. And why do we know about it? Because of DStretch. Because of DStretch, we know what's up there on that wall and be able to find these kinds of things. All right. Now I'm going to talk about the Red Buffalo site, which is over next to Valley of the Shields, or next to Weatherman Draw. And I'm going to talk about Frozen Leg Cave. So I'll talk about Frozen Leg Cave first. So this is Frozen Leg Cave. We're across the canyon at Bighorn Canyon, a few miles from Fort Smith. There's a housing development up here. And that housing development was originally designed. There was going to be a Trans-Park Road at Bighorn Canyon National Recreation Area, and the road got built from the south up to Berry's Landing, but it never got finished. So the road got stopped by the Crow tribe, and people speculated on the fact that the road was going to get built, and they put in a cabin kind of housing development up here. And in the process of putting in that housing development, they wanted to get access to the river, or to the lake then, because it had already been flooded. The river had been flooded, so it was already a dam. So they wanted to have access to it. So they built a road, and you can see the road here. Yeah, it was never. No one could ever drive on it. They would haul your boat down there with a 4-wheel drive tractor, you know, and then haul your boat back up, you know, and if your boat survived it, or you could go down on a 4-wheeler. It was absolutely insane to try to do what they did. And in fact, the guy who built that road, they said that they had to give him 2 shots of whiskey in the morning before he got on that Caterpillar, because he was, and they tied him off with a cable at times to be able to hang the thing on, to be able to drive the thing to build that road. And he got off one day and walked along this cliff right here and went into this cave that's behind here and found these paintings. To access it now, we have to come here and go down like this, down in these trees right about here, and then crawl up to this point, to the top up here, and then go into it from there. I can report that one of the things that we did after recording this site about 8 years ago, I had been there several times before, but I had wanted to see if there couldn't be a way for the National Park Service to gain control of this land that was private land here. And I have heard independently, I don't think it's been reported publicly yet, but that just happened in the past a month or two. The National Park Service bought this land from this private ownership up here, and so they now own the cave. It was privately owned previously, but they now own this cave that I'm going to show you right now. So that's a good thing if that's the case. So when we went, we got Lauren Roush again, you know, from Red Lodge to survive with us, our climber who goes, and he helped us put a ladder up to where we could gain access up into the one hole you can go through to get into the cave system. And here's Lauren on the ladder checking it out. So you don't want to fall, because it's about 600 feet, you know, so you'd probably bounce once, but you know, it's actually not too bad when it's just the up and down and the effort you put into it. And I'd been in the cave like 3 times before, but you're in there, you put so much energy to getting into it that we never had much time in it, you know, so we didn't spend much time in it because you're so worn out just getting into it and thinking about having to crawl out of that canyon when you get out of the thing, you know. And in any case, this is what the hole you go through to get into the cave. So you crawl through that hole and you get through the hole, and it's not as bad as it looks there, because it opens up on the other side. You can see the hole back here, and it opens up on this side pretty quickly, so that you're able to then, but you see there's some paintings on the wall here above this right here. But really interesting is there's the painted handprint right over the entrance, that entrance hole on the other side. This is older art in the cave than what I'm going to show you. Here's the main panel inside the cave. This actually opens to the outside. That's in DStretch. So you can see it there in DStretch, so that you can see that it's got a lot of different figures. And you can see one with a buffalo head, etc. The panel I really wanted to show you is this one. So you'll see there are several other panels, but this is the one that's of interest to us right now. You will see that you have in DStretch, see it a little better, you have this guy with these big ears and big eyes, and he's got obviously something going on. He's got his hand on a buffalo, and then next to him is a buffalo man, one of these buffalo men that I'm talking about. So you'll see this guy's got buffalo hooves. He proves that he's a buffalo man. He's got a buffalo headdress on his head. And I think what's going on with this guy is that we have, this is a quick drawing of the cave when we were in it. And this is where this panel is on this wall. And there's an underground chamber at the back of that, so that it's hollow underneath you when you're there. And I think that's what's happening is that when this guy is in the cave, that he goes into a trance. And his ears are really keen for listening, because when the river was going, this cave is around the bend from right here, and there's a rapids right here when you go around this bend. It's the only photograph I could find of the canyon like this. But I think what's happening is he's hearing those rapids down there, and they sound like buffalo hooves, like a herd of buffalo running or something like that. So that he is in the notion of listening like crazy. He's got his ears up high like that to show that he's listening as carefully as possible to see if he can hear that buffalo herd that's down there. And then he's going to transfer into this buffalo man that you see, which is evident because of his tracks that he gives at the bottom and the tracks that he leaves as he walks. So that this, again, is a transformational story here of a human into a buffalo human that you have.
What age is this?
This one's going to be quite a bit more recent. And so I'll show you in a few minutes a couple of others, and we'll put this one in a much more recent period of time. We think probably this is associated with the crow and dated somewhere around 500 years ago. Okay, let's go to Red Buffalo. So Red Buffalo is a site that I think many of you have probably been to if you've been to Weatherman Draw. It's about a quarter mile north of the entrance to Weatherman Draw. And here it is. It's just in the you can see it from the road, actually, when you drive in there. And here's there are a bunch of figures in the site. But this is the figure I want to talk about. There are about 5 or 6 other figures there. This is the one I want to talk about. So you'll see that this is a buffalo. His nose is eroded away. So his snout and everything is gone. But you can see here's the buffalo, here's his back leg, here's his front leg. It's probably got a hoof on it, or maybe a claw. He's got what's called a heart line coming inside his body. And then what's on top of him? Another buffalo man. Another buffalo human is on top of him. This one, curiously enough, got wings. So that we not only have buffalo and human combined, we've got bird or avian combinations with it. A lot of people who see this one say that they think it's been enhanced with lipstick, but I don't think that's the case at all. I think this is from trade paint. I think it was from vermilion paint that they traded and brought in. So it was a thick kind of paint that you would put on like makeup. And they made this out of vermilion paint, which would date this after AD 1750, 1800. Or somewhere in that period of time, maybe 1850 even, in that period of time.
So a photograph you had before this one.
Yes.
Over at Fort Smith.
Oh.
He had a wing then also.
Yes, one did have a wing. Yes, yes, good for you. We can go back to him. He does have one wing. So that winged idea is not totally lost on this one also having a wing. These winged figures that you see at this site. So, in essence then, this one always reminds me of this ledger drawing. This is what he wrote on this, a dream of himself changing to a destroyer and riding a buffalo eagle. So that we have this individual who had his vision, and he was in essence then riding a buffalo eagle. Now it's different, but the whole notion is that his horse turned into a buffalo that turned into be able to fly like an eagle. So it doesn't make it too far out of line to suggest that this is a buffalo human who is flying, in a sense, if you understand how I put the two together in that kind of thinking. All right. So the buffalo man site now. I'm going to move off to the other side of the Bighorn Mountains. This is Buffalo, Wyoming up here. Okay, so I'm off on this side of the Bighorn Mountains. And here's this site. This is you can see this, interestingly enough, I think that this whole thing looks like a buffalo emerging from the earth. And you have the buffalo's head down here on the front of the thing. I mean, you got the buffalo right there on the thing. So this time our memetolith is the whole feature that you see there. And what's on the end of it is a buffalo man, a big, tall buffalo man. This one you can see is about 5 feet tall, or 4.5 to 5 feet tall. Interestingly enough, off to the left of him, there's a figure down here, which is harder to see, but here he is, and he's got what we think is an atlatl in his hand. So this is the weight on the atlatl here. This we think is a, oh, thanks, I'm about to quit. Just about perfect.
I don't want to stop.
All right, thank you very much. So anyway, this is an atlatl on his hand, and atlatls have been found in caves very close to this. You'll see here they are, dated at somewhere around AD 200 to 500. So that's before the bow and arrow, which comes about AD 500. So the atlatl then is in use at that period of time. So we have this guy associated with a megalith, this guy associated with the buffalo head that some people see, and then here's our timeline that I've sort of put together for what we have. So we have the oldest, 1800 to 1500 years old, this one 1500 years old. These two could reverse. I could be wrong here. I'm probably more right here. With this about 500 years old, we have reasons to believe this is by the Crow, and they don't get here till 500 years ago. And so this, the most recent, is probably also by the Crow at this age up here at the end of the whole thing. Now, isn't that a fascinating thing? You just think about that figure. Now, what is that? What is that made people make a buffalo human type figure over that length of time? And the answer is probably the buffalo that they survived on, the importance of the buffalo that they had, and the importance of the buffalo to their way of life. All right, thank you very much. That's a shame. All right, I'll answer questions if anyone has some for me up here. Yes.
Yeah, when was that DStretch developed?
Oh, it's about 15 years ago now. Kobe, am I right or not? 15 years ago, I'd say, about 15 years ago, yeah. So yeah, it's pretty amazing, isn't it, what it does for us with DStretch. Other questions? Yes.
Which timber maniac?
What's what?
Which timber maniac?
I'm still not hearing you.
Which timber maniac?
Oh, what's Tim doing now? Tim Urbaniak's doing the same stuff he's always done. He's out chasing out historic images, you know. So yeah, he's doing fine. Yeah, yeah. Other questions? Yes.
The tall Kyle was 9 foot. Showing it was up here north. Do you have a connection of that back to some of those 9 and 12 foot tall Fremont pictures down in Escalante?
Not yet. But we've only made this correlation between the Fremont and the Kiowa sometime in the last 5 years, maybe 6 years. So we're going to find a lot more. Yeah, we're going to discover a lot more. We're going to discover that stuff down there will fit with some of the stuff up here. So yeah.
Larry, would you talk about the motorcycle club?
About what?
The motorcycle club going into the valley.
Oh yeah, yeah, I'm sure some of you are aware of the new trail system that they're looking at in over in Weatherman Draw, and the BLM's looking at a new trail system with, and the thing that there's what we call an ACEC, an Area of Critical Environmental Concern, and Valley of the Shields and Weatherman Draw are protected by the ACEC. But in the latest look at where the trails are going to be improved, they've got all of them going into that ACEC. And now you can't take motorized vehicles in there, but you certainly would be able to take a powered bike and other things off-road in there. And I don't like that idea very well, with more people getting access to that area. So I just wanted to bring up that fact. I don't know what all is going to happen with that. I've already found one rock art. They did a survey of the area that they were going to do more work in, and there's already one rock art site we know about they didn't find, which is not unusual, because people who do archaeological survey often don't find rock art sites. They're looking at the ground, looking for artifacts on the ground. They miss rock art sites. But All right, well, good, thank you. Yeah, no.